Hello, and welcome to the GPS 200 Module 4 presentation on stress management. What is stress? We experience stress when we are faced with a tense or threatening situation that requires us to change or adapt our behavior. Stress is a condition or feeling experienced when a person perceives that demands exceed the personal and social resources the individual is able to mobilize. We feel we have lost control. There are many sources of stress, to include some life and death situations like war and natural disasters. These are inherently stressful. It is important to recognize that events that are usually viewed as positive, like a wedding or a job promotion, can also be stressful. Many psychologists believe day-to-day petty annoyances and irritations, such as being stuck in traffic, misplacing car keys, getting into trivial arguments, are as stressful as major life events because, although seemingly minor, these incidents give rise to feelings of pressure, frustration, conflict, and anxiety. When we experience pressure from either internal or external forces, we feel forced to intensify our efforts to perform at higher levels. Internal forces include meeting our personal standards. External forces include competition or imposed standards in jobs, school, and family demands. We feel frustrated when someone or something stands between us and our goal. 5 basic sources of frustration are delays, lack of resources, losses, failure, discrimination. We also feel stress over the conflict that arises when we are faced with 2 or more incompatible demands, opportunities, needs, or goals. Is it possible for us to create unnecessary stress for ourselves? Sometimes we subject ourselves to stress by internalizing a set of irrational, self-defeating beliefs that add unnecessarily to the normal stresses of living and that are independent of outside forces. Do people who are resistant to stress share certain traits? People who cope well with stress tend to be self-confident and optimistic. They also see themselves as being able to affect their situations, a trait referred to as having an internal locus of control. They share a trait called hardiness, a tendency to experience or perceive difficult demands as challenging rather than threatening. They have resilience or bounce-back ability. There are 2 broad approaches to coping. Direct coping, action people take to change an uncomfortable situation. When we cope directly with a particular threat or conflict, we do it in one of 3 ways: confrontation, compromise, or withdrawal. When we confront a stressful situation and admit to ourselves there is a problem that needs to be solved, we may learn new skills, enlist other people's aid, or try harder to reach our goal. Confrontation may also include expressions of anger. Compromise usually requires adjusting expectations or desires. The conflict is resolved by settling for less than what was originally sought. Sometimes the most effective way of coping with a stressful situation is to distance oneself from it. The danger of withdrawal, however, is that it may become a maladaptive habit. There is also defensive coping, which is various ways people convince themselves through a form of self-deception that they are not really threatened or do not really want something they cannot get. Defense mechanisms are ways of deceiving ourselves about the causes of stressful events, thus reducing conflict, frustration, pressure, and anxiety. Following are some examples. Denial is a refusal to acknowledge a painful or threatening reality. Repression is the blocking out of unacceptable thoughts or impulses from consciousness. People under severe stress sometimes revert to childlike behavior called regression. Because adults can't stand feeling helpless, becoming more childlike can make total dependency or helplessness more tolerable. And sometimes people intellectualize their problems in order to distance themselves from a particularly disturbing situation. In sum, our stress responses are triggered by stressors that represent the gap between our perceived demands and our perceived resources. We'd like to think that resourceful autonomous learners, such as being developed in this course, might have a different view and response to stress. On the next 3 slides are listed several stress management techniques suggested by adult students in previous classes. Which might you try? What techniques can you add to the list? Massage, exercise, such as walking, walking with music, nature walk, running, exercise bike, exercise class, meditation, praying, breathing deeply, watching television, talking with family and friends, anger management. And continuing, self-confidence, punch or scream into a pillow, write down thoughts and feelings, don't beat up yourself. Stability zones. If home is perceived as stressful due to homework, why not set off one spot to do homework? Breathing. Learn to say no. Feel a sense of purpose. And last slide. Recognize stress triggers. Problem solving. Get enough sleep. Laugh. Do a family activity. Sightseeing. Verbalize that you will not accept stress. A hot bubble bath. Therapy. Smile. Which one of these ideas can you adopt? What might you be able to add? Thank you for your time and attention to this presentation. Have a great day.